Hello everyone, my name is Belden. I'm a gameplay animator at Ubisoft Montreal on Assassin's Creed codename Invictus. I'd like to talk a little bit about my career pathway and how I got here, as well as add some tips at the end to talk a little bit about how you can improve your reel. So, who is this video for? Anyone who has an interest in working as a professional animator, whether that be a student or an individual who's looking to discipline swap into animation. I'm going to focus a little more on games today, so if you have an interest in working in the AAA game space, I'm hoping that this is a resource that can help you. So let's kick things off with just a quick introduction about who I am, what I've done, and how I got here. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, my name is Belden, and I work as a gameplay animator at Ubisoft Montreal. I haven't always been an animator. I did graduate from an animation program in 2019, but at that time I was convinced that I wanted to work as a modeler. So I got a gig working at a local studio, small indie company called Kindly Beast, where I was working as an environment artist. Kindly Beast was made up of a bunch of video game dev veterans from Ottawa, which is where I grew up. And we had previously worked together when I was working as a freelance 3D artist during my time in school. It was a very unique circumstance. It was a lot of work. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it did help me ramp my skills up. At the tail end of 2019, Kindly Beast ended up laying off the majority of their staff, myself included, so I ended up going to the TV industry at a studio called Mercury Filmworks. There, I got to work on a number of pretty cool productions, my favorite one being the Bob's Burgers movie. I'd done a ton of CG there, and it was a lot of fun. Fast forward nearly 2 years later, and there were a ton of layoffs sweeping through the TV industry. I also ended up losing my job at Mercury Filmworks. That makes 2 layoffs in a row. Quite shitty, but it is what it is. About a year into my employment with Mercury Filmworks, I then realized that I wasn't really enjoying parts of the process of modeling anymore, not as much as I used to. And I was finding myself animating a lot more in my spare time. Obviously these were skills that I'd learned in school, but I was just doing it for fun because I was enjoying myself. Eventually I started posting these animations on Twitter, I posted them in Discords for feedback, and I got a lot of really great advice from working animators, and this started to really kind of light a fire under my ass, and I was like, oh man, I'm really liking animating. So by the time the layoffs happened at Mercury, I had quite a few shots that I could pick from to construct a demo reel to apply with. A friend that was working at Ubisoft Montreal at the time had notified me that they had a gameplay animator position open. He sent me a referral, which was very helpful, but I sent in my reel and I got to do 2 interviews. About a week after those interviews were completed, I was given an offer and a choice to work on either For Honor or Skull and Bones. I actually ended up choosing Skull and Bones, and the reason for this is because I felt in the interview I really got along with the team. I felt a lot more comfortable than my interview with For Honor, and I always prioritize work environment over projects, so yeah, it was a huge draw for me, and I do not regret my decision. I really enjoyed the people that I worked with on Skull and Bones. They are still people I talk to today. They were a wonderful team, and I would work again with them anytime. So I spent about 9 months on Skull and Bones, and once our mandate was wrapped up, I spent a little bit of time between projects helping out our motion capture studio with some facial mocap. Afterwards, around October, I got brought on to Assassin's Creed Invictus as the gameplay animator. Okay, so yeah, let's just call that intro done and get into some animation tips. So the first tip on my list is going to be identifying goals. What do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. Animation is a pretty broad career pathway, and you should look for opportunities and the type of work that you really enjoy doing. And this is something, the best way that I can describe identifying this is the sort of work that you really find yourself gravitating towards on your own time. And so I really want to reinforce the importance of being able to identify the things that you really do enjoy doing, because this will help shape your goals. And maybe you really like doing first-person stuff, and there's a ton of first-person games out there, or maybe you find out that maybe you really like doing isometric static camera stuff, or you love working with creatures, or you want to do takedowns and assassinations. There's tons of options, so find the things that you enjoy to do. I wouldn't say it's a mandatory thing to have to do personal projects, but just if you ever catch yourself doing things and you're like, man, I really enjoy doing this, give it a little bit more thought. Think about it and see if maybe there's a job around that. Alright, so let's get into our next tip, targeting an industry. So by industry, I'm primarily talking about separating things by games, VFX, and then TV and feature. It does not mean that because you choose one, you can never work in one of the others, but this is more targeted, especially towards students, just to try to maybe nudge you guys in a specific direction so that you have kind of your best chance rather than having a reel that kind of covers a little bit of everything without really focusing or shining on any one particular subject. When it comes to TV and feature, you want to showcase your ability to create great performances. So this is going to include a lot of dialogue shots, a lot of shots where you have opportunities to convey emotion, not just through facial reactions or expressions, but also through body acting. This side of things, you want to focus a lot on making shots that are extremely well referenced, but also extremely well acted. Taking a sound clip and just animating around that sound clip without taking the time to really think on the performance that you're trying to create is going to make the difference between a successful shot and one that just feels a little generic and lifeless. So when it comes to VFX, you're going to be animating a lot of elements that are going to be CGI within live action film or TV shows. So it could be anything from vehicles to creatures to digidoubles, and if you don't know what that is, it's essentially just a CGI double of an actor, and you're going to be animating these stunts. So, Spider-Man triple flipping through the air and then, slamming into the wall because he got punched by Rhino or something. That's going to be CGI, hand animated, and not necessarily a stunt guy throwing himself into a window. And now finally, that brings us to games. There's obviously tons of little tips and tricks and generalized advice that we could give, but if I could condense everything into the simplest form, your animations need to look like they fit in the game of the studio that you are applying to. So let's get started with tip number 3, every shot a purpose. This is going to seem like an extremely straightforward tip, but I promise you it is incredibly important. When you are applying to a studio, you are trying to convey to them that you can do the job. And whatever that job may be, whatever requirements there are, you want to sell them that you can do that visually with your reel. Now, you might not be able to do every single thing with a single animation, so you have different animations in your reel to convey that message to them. It means that you are looking to choose the very most specific, best shots in your reel that are going to convey those things, reinforce those things. It also means that you're going to be able to reduce the amount of bloat that's in your reel. I'm sure you've heard from many people that having a long reel can be towards your detriment. Some recruiters and some individuals that are going through reels, they do not have a lot of time in their day to go over these things, and they will go through very rapidly, skim through your reel if it's too long. So I like to keep mine generally under 30 seconds. And when you take this approach of choosing each shot with a purpose, it's going to help you keep that bloat way under control. So if we use the project that I'm currently working on as an example, what we're looking for in animators, especially in your reels, is an understanding of how to operate player states. So you, as an animator, you understand how gameplay functions from a technical aspect. When you break open the animation graph and you start piecing together states in the state machine, that you understand how that looks and you understand what kind of animations come with that. And now we're finally at our last tip, being unique. This is probably one of the hardest tips that I can give because it is so easy to say, and it is something that on execution I find quite difficult. When I say being unique, I'm talking about aspects of you've identified what kind of shot you want to do. So let's say you want to do an acted shot, and what is going to set you apart with this acted shot from the multitude of other acted shots that exist out there? How do you make this one special? Or maybe you're working on a first-person animation and you ask yourself how you can make something that's brand new and unique. So maybe your idea is you make a first-person animation with a weapon being a steam basket full of soup dumplings. And so that concludes my tips video. I really do hope that this was helpful, especially if you're a student. I understand what it's like. It feels like I graduated just yesterday, despite the fact that it was over 4 years ago. But yeah, it is a joy to be able to share knowledge with people. So if there's any questions, feel free to leave a comment. You can find me on social media at Calvlath. It'll be on the screen right now. And yeah,